My name is Tania and I'm a community activist, advocate, and organizer. I live in San Pablo. Where I live it's pretty humble. If you drive 5 minutes away, it's really violent, or less. I actually live like 2 minutes away or 1 minute away in a car from North Richmond. When I was smaller, I remember I saw Chevron and I had no idea what it was. One time, I was in the car with my dad, and we were driving, and if you pass through the refinery or any refinery, you see like these lights and smoke, and I asked my dad, like, "Dad, is that Disneyland? Like, I want to go to Disneyland." And he was like, "No, that's not Disneyland." But he didn't know what to tell me. And it's because of the lack of information that's out there. He wasn't really able to tell me that's a refinery, that's Chevron, this is what it does, this is what it means. And no one really sat down with me and told me what Chevron was and the power it had in the city and the power it has globally.
Chevron is the single largest greenhouse gas emitter in the entire state of California, and the primary source of that is the Richmond Chevron refinery. It's one of the largest refineries in the entire country. It's one of the oldest refineries in the entire country, and it is an enormous source of toxins and pollutants and waste.
One of the most dangerous emissions is carbon dioxide. That is a greenhouse gas emission. The root causes of health problems are those types of emissions.
The health issues in Richmond have everything to do with the cancer-causing chemicals that are being spewed out of not only the Chevron Richmond refinery, but also the rest of the refineries that are within Contra Costa County. Actually, last year, the Chevron refinery alone released 37 different types of toxic chemicals, 800,000 pounds of them into the air in just 1 year.
You can just imagine what Richmond directly is suffering on a daily basis, being the home of the Chevron oil refinery. And there are communities that are built right alongside the refinery. The two communities that I mentioned, Atchison Village and Liberty Village, are only separated from Chevron by a small wall. It's about maybe 6 feet tall, that wall. So it doesn't even go as high as the top of a house.
And the health consequences are asthma rates for children that are estimated at twice the rate for the rest of Contra Costa County, cancers, prostate, breast, and ovarian cancers are higher, much significantly higher than in the state, reproductive cancers in women.
They give money to community residents, so when they start getting these health problems, they already signed a contract saying that they can't say anything. And from one of the big explosions I received money. So they basically bought the residents so they won't put a lawsuit or anything like that. My brother received money when he was 18. My sister will be receiving money this year when she turns 18. And depending how close you live to the refinery, depending how much money you got from the refinery. I heard that these checks are as low as $80 in some cases, but it was basically a way to give people money for them to shut up. And they still do that till this day. So this is a Rice Center in Richmond. It's been here for about a year. If you want to, you can come and walk in and check out the room where we do our journalism class and we do our editing class as well. So the digital justice team meets in the computer lab every Thursday. Those are actually two members from the digital justice team. The Rice Center was like one of the first places I came to when I decided to be active in my community. We have a lot of visions of what we want to do with the media team here, and I know that for sure that's one of my main priorities, to tell the community what's happening, because a lot of the time people don't have time to go to city council meetings or to go to all these meetings. So kind of go to the meetings and report back and tell them, like, this is what's happening, this is what they want to do, and what do you think about it? Do you think we should do something about it, or you think it's right, what they're doing? So that's what we're trying to get to. I was living a very negative lifestyle. I was not a good influence, not even to my siblings. Never went to school my senior year, and I smoked every day. It was a certain point where I was addicted to ecstasy pills. I never had a mentor. I never had someone to sit down with me and tell me, like, what you're doing is wrong, don't do it. I became really depressed. I feel like the world was really cruel and cold, and I just didn't want to deal with anyone. And I feel it was all part of the oppression that I felt, but I couldn't see because I was blinded. The thing that I did do right was I re-brainwashed myself. So I started watching documentaries, and then I started getting into independent media, which really helped me compare and contrast mainstream media and independent media. That's what I'm trying to do with with the media that I'm doing. I'm trying to give people facts, give people information that they usually don't receive.
Tania Polito, we're fortunate in those of us who have to live in the toxic triangle to have young activists like Tania Polito. She's from the Richmond community. She's a dedicated activist, and she's not afraid. She comes to every meeting. She raises her voice. She asks the questions she needs to ask, and she takes a stand when she needs to hold the world's 5th largest corporation to account. She's not afraid at all of Chevron. She's not afraid of the political leaders who support Chevron.
One time I met the representative of the Richmond refinery, and I told her, as a community resident, that I have been living here for a while, and since I've been living here, I've gone through a couple of explosions and oil spills. I asked if Chevron can consider sending community residents, explaining to them what chemicals are being released daily or yearly. During the summer, I was doing organizing, and I went canvassing to some of the houses, and a lot of the residents didn't even know what the siren meant. They don't even know the consequences of them living close to a refinery. Like, they had no information at all. And we live in a really low income community where a lot of the students live below the poverty level. So I feel like Chevron, who makes billions, it wouldn't hurt them paying 16 to 20 million. Well, that, at least in my perspective.
So there was a recent campaign in Richmond in the 2008 elections. It was called Measure T, and that measure on the ballot was to ensure that Chevron paid its fair share of taxes to the city of Richmond, because up until then they weren't paying very much, but it was the highest earning company in Richmond.
That's one of the campaigns I'm in right now, trying to get Chevron to pay the adequate amount of taxes.
It was all a volunteer-based. Community members in Richmond worked really hard to gather the signatures that they needed to get it on the ballot, and they worked really hard to promote the Measure T campaign, door knocking, organizing, and telling people why Measure T would be good for Richmond.
Chevron spent, at a minimum, $300,000 to try to defeat that measure, and they lost. The community wanted those taxes, wanted to hold Chevron to account, and the measure passed. Then Chevron took the city to court, and it has millions of dollars that it spends on its legal arm, and it won the case in court.
So we had received $60 million from them because Measure T passed, but then they sued us, so we had to give back the money.
So until the lawsuit is determined, whether or not Chevron wins or loses, the city doesn't begin to see any of the money. So if Chevron wins, the city won't see any of it. If they lose, then they'll start to get some of that money, but that measure was passed in the 2008 elections, and Richmond still hasn't seen any of that money.
The bottom line in Richmond is that you have a uniquely powerful and organized community, and that is what is the hope.
I feel like coming to the park a lot helped me realize the significance of people and the impact we have on the earth, and it just changed everything.